Hello and welcome to the Sweeney Show Business and Law podcast. Joining me today is Mark Ryan of Quintas. Mark is a personal insolvency expert, amongst other things. Mark, you're very welcome.
Thanks, David.
If you want to tell everybody a bit about yourself, what you do and your company, some information.
So, as David mentioned, I work for Quintas. We're based in Blackpool in Cork. We have 60 staff. We're mainly an accountancy practice. I'm an accountant myself, and about 5 years ago I decided to become a personal insolvency practitioner, which I'll be very active doing at the moment, so I think that's what this morning is about.
Sure, yeah. So what is the... so personal insolvency is very topical, I suppose. When we call it the recession hit 8 to 10 years ago, people found themselves in really dire financial circumstances and personal circumstances. There seemed to be no way out for a lot of people. A lot of legacy debt, a lot of, I suppose, legislation in Ireland wasn't built for the circumstance that people found themselves in. And then all of a sudden this personal insolvency, or this solution of insolvency, was created. What exactly is personal insolvency? Or is that too broad a term?
No, I don't think so. I think it's probably a recognition back in 2011, 2012 that, as a country we got our bailout from the IMF and the Troika. The banks got their bailout from the government. And then you had Joe Soap or whoever, the person on the street, and they were there suffering. The banks, to be fair, didn't know what to do. Most people were facing bankruptcy, and the family home was under threat.
Okay.
So the legislation was brought in. A core part of it is for protection of the family home, but also to deal with all the residual debt that happened through a property crash, a recession, and an economic crash.
And then when you say legislation, what exactly did the government do? What was there actually specific acts and guidelines that were brought in at the time?
Yeah, so there's the personal insolvency legislation was brought in.
Okay.
It's governed by the Insolvency Service of Ireland, through the Minister of Justice or the Department of Justice, and to act under the legislation as a PIP, you must be licensed.
Okay.
To get your license, you must do a course, and you must do an exam to qualify as a PIP.
Very good. Okay.
So after 20 years of not doing exams, I decided to sit down and do a lovely exam to become a PIP. And it's very technical.
Yeah, and it's very regulated, is it?
It's 100% regulated.
Yeah.
It's all court driven, really.
Okay.
Everything must be court approved.
Okay.
But what it does is it gives somebody protection from the creditors for 70 days to allow somebody like me try and mediate between the parties and work out.
So a freeze is put on everything for that period of time while you kind of sort things out.
Everything. The easy example I give: somebody's up for a home repossession next Wednesday, and we get a protective certificate on Tuesday. That is automatically adjourned. Okay. And that's the way it works.
Okay.
Now it's quite complex. You do an application to the ISI, you do an application to the court. But I call it a very simple, complex system. For me, it's simple. It's all about the solution.
Yeah, so you just mentioned a word at the very start there, bankruptcy. Just what exactly is bankruptcy?
Bankruptcy, I suppose, used to be very archaic.
Yeah.
It was very much a big stigma. You had 12 years in bankruptcy under historical legislation before the insolvency legislation.
So that meant that if you were declared bankrupt, so you couldn't pay debts, you go to the government or go to somebody and you'd say, listen, I am a bankrupt, which meant that the people you owed money to, unfortunately, they were bad debts to those, but you couldn't trade or run a company or do anything for 12 years.
12 years.
Okay.
And you were, so for most people, if you think about of an entrepreneur, if it went wrong, and we're a country of entrepreneurs, that's 12 years of your career where you're just stuck.
Yeah.
In America,
if you think in America, you're going to say
America
that,
it's completely different.
Yeah, different attitude over there. Yeah.
So I suppose prior to that, a lot of people would have had no choice but to go to the UK.
Yeah.
Do their year or 18 months, set up a base there.
So in the UK, you could just, it was a 12-month or 18-month bankruptcy period, so you could just move over there. Yeah. Avail of their processes, and then once you've done that, that carries over and you come back and trade in Ireland.
In simple terms.
Okay.
So we were well outside that. So if you think of the UK as also Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
So what's happened then through the personal insolvency legislation, that is now 12 months.
Okay.
So somebody who's in bankruptcy, it's 12 months and it's a 3 years payments order.
Okay.
But just to explain, the insolvency legislation is a step before that.
Okay.
It's effectively a buffer zone between if you can't agree a restructure with creditors. Yeah. And bankruptcy is the ultimate solution. Okay. You can't just walk into bankruptcy. Okay. You must see if the insolvency legislation is applicable to you. Okay. And that's what it's all about.
Very good. And then if the so new legislation came in 2012.
2012.
So we're nearly six years into it. How many people have availed of it?
Disappointingly, 6,000.
Okay.
The good news is that there's
Out of what you think, if we say 6,000, how many people do you think fall under this umbrella?
100,000.
Okay. Okay.
And there's probably a few stats I'll give you later on, but
that's okay.
there's a couple of 100,000.
So why do you think then that's so low? Why only 6,000?
I would say probably the easiest way to explain it is after I meet somebody, the first thing they say is, geez, thank God. I understand where I'm going, I have a plan, but I wish I'd met you 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Why didn't I know about it? So I think it's awareness.
Okay.
I think a lot of it's awareness, a lot of it's fear. You know, there was a stigma about bankruptcy, but this is just a solution to a problem that's been going on for 10 years.
Okay.
And people have another 5 or 6 years to go through the system. So that's 16 years that somebody has to. I think that's enough pain. That's enough time for somebody.
And is there any government support or grant available to anybody that wanted to go through the process?
There wasn't at the start, which was another problem. So you had, 100 odd practitioners out there trying to meet people, but there was no government scheme.
Okay.
So you've got a free legal aid scheme for people who are in trouble, and that applies to pretty much anybody. But there's no scheme for anybody who's in debt to go meet somebody and get some advice. So I think it was about 12, 18 months ago, the government launched the Awalia scheme. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. My kids are in the Gael school and they're always correcting me, but it's called the Awalia scheme, right? And that's really where you can, as a debtor or somebody who's in debt, go meet a PIP or a solicitor, and the government will pay for that meeting. It's very formal. I must give them a formal letter. I must review their assets and liabilities, and it's a professional advice. So that, for me, obviously, it allows somebody go and get the advice that I think they need. That once they understand it, most people will go ahead and do it.
And then so let's pare it back a small bit. So if I am an individual and does the insolvency process cover both? Traditionally, it sounds like it would have been business owners. Their business wouldn't went well and there's outstanding debts. But is it the same for a POE worker? Maybe got into some property development or had a rental property or something like that. Is there a category of person that the insolvency legislation typically protects?
No, I'd say I suppose one thing there's been nobody left untouched by the recession. Like literally, we hit the wall and everybody hit it at the same time. And it was carnage at the time. There's no profile. You have public sector, you have private sector, you have company directors, you have postmen to guards to professionals. There's everybody. Yes, maybe there's property developers. So the stats out there say that 70% of the people who go through the insolvency process are between the age of 35 and 55. Only 6,000 people have availed of the system.
So these are people that want to work again. They want to get back into earn an income from themselves, provide for their families or whatever it might be.
And get a structure and a plan. Because I suppose the legislation was brought in because it was just being kicked down the road. Nobody was doing anything. And everybody was just kind of facing into what do I do?
If just to flip it a small bit, so if I'm a debtor, or if I was owed money by somebody and then they've elected to go down the insolvency practice, obviously they're doing that it's in good faith and it's a last recourse. But is there any recourse for me? Do I ever get paid back my money?
That's a creditor.
The
easy way to explain is an individual is in an arrangement for 5 or 6 years depending on the scheme. They bring forward the maximum of their assets and their income, less what's called reasonable living expenses for that 6 years. So for example, let's say if you do the numbers, somebody has had a net take home pay of €4,000. There was 2 adults, 2 secondary school children. The allowances are €2,200. That's €500 for childcare. That's €1,000 for mortgage. That gives €200 or €300 that's available for the creditors. Calculate that over 6 years. That's the maximum they can offer. It doesn't matter whether the debts.
That's a timeline. That there's a 6-year plan that what you can afford. So there might be something left for somebody.
Absolutely. And what that allows them to do is get back to some sort of normality. They're stuck to reasonable living expenses, which are quite difficult. These aren't a luxurious life that you have. They're like probably 30 to 40% below what a normal person would be expected to live on. But people are willing to do it because they want to get out of it.
And they'll commit to it because there's an exit for them, I suppose.
And that €200 or €300 is all they can offer, regardless of whether their debts are 50 grand or 50 million. It doesn't matter.
What then? I suppose I want to ask you first of all. So, if a person maybe is watching this and they feel there's information here that's valuable to them, and they think that actually this might apply to me. What's the first stage? What should they do? How does the process work?
Well, there is a register of PIPs. So obviously, if it's Cork based,
and is there a lot of PIPs out there at the moment?
On the register currently, there's 110.
Okay.
But this is a very niche area.
Okay.
This is a very specialist area, and there's probably 20, maybe 25 of us who are active.
Okay.
And
why is there? What happened there? What's the difference between the? Is that people thought at the start that it might be an easy process to take on, and then when you realise how
it's
complex it is,
you must. There's been an investment by everybody who's still alive and still doing this work. There's been an investment of time and money in education. It's brand new legislation. It's a brand new system. No software systems, nothing like that. We've set them all up. So if you were to get into it now, there's a significant amount of investment you must make into it. So I suppose a lot of people have kind of pared back from that. Naturally, the economy has grown as well. So certain people who were deciding maybe I will do this have gone back to what their core business was. As a firm and as a business, we're committed to continue doing this.
So the first stage then is to meet with a PIP. And what does that involve then? Bring all my financial statements, bring every kind of, do you want you don't need the deeds of my house, but you want if I have a mortgage, the redemption on my mortgage, my living expenses, if I have a car loan, if I have a credit card, all that kind of stuff.
We have I suppose, I was speaking to somebody yesterday just driving along in the car and had a quick chat with him. I said, look, we have a standard template most people will fill out. Assets, liabilities, income and expenses, and what's your family structure. Once you tell me that, I can work it out myself. I would meet with everybody, sit down with them and have a good chat with them, both separately if they want to do it initially, husband or wife, and with a couple afterwards, and with a family member if they want to bring somebody, and just tell them and show them what needs to happen. After that, they get a formal letter saying this is what you need to do.
And then are living expenses calculated specific to that person? Because maybe someone's let's say in lifestyle, but the age of their kids, they might have children in secondary school, they might have some go to college. Is that all specific to that person and tailored?
It is,
to
because
an extent?
what they did was they did a survey. And they calculated what light and heat would cost, what education would cost, what travel costs would. So there's a set cost depending on what age your children are. That moves up or down as you go through the program, because it's a 6-year program. So you start with an 8-year-old and then they become a 13-year-old at the end of it. So those allowances are given to people, and they're freely available. It's all on the ISI website. If you googled
the ISI, what's the ISI? That's
Insolvency Service of Ireland. They have reasonable living expenses. If you just went in and actually just searched reasonable living expenses, it comes up and it will tell you exactly what it is. But that would, I suppose the good thing is that give the bar then. That give the bar to everybody. So when you're talking either insolvency or when you're talking directly to the bank, those numbers are the basic numbers, and then a little bit higher if you're outside.
And I think if I was to enter into that, or I was an individual that thought I would qualify and wanted to go into the personal insolvency and felt that this was a solution for me, I think the biggest fear I would have would be their family home. That fear is, you're married, whether you're husband, wife or partner, or whatever it might be, at home with their children, the fear of, I presume all of this is confidential, is it?
Absolutely.
So that you know kind of fear of your neighbour finding out about your experience or anything like that. And so secondly then, my family home, do I lose my family home, or what happens with my family home?
The interesting thing about all of this is, of those 6,000 people who have gone through, about 2,000 would be people who would be family home related. The family home is protected under the legislation. It was probably one of the core parts of it. Protect the family home and keep people in it if it's possible. As part of that,
because I presume, just from a legal point of view, that the bank or mortgage provider, there's mispayments there, so that's gone through the process there, and like maybe it's human nature, they might wait until the bank has started the process, there's repossession or whatever it might be. Like, is there a certain time where they meet you and they've gone beyond that of recovery, or do you say, like you say, you can get your 70 days, so the minute that happens you can just put a stall on that and see a lot of time to maybe step back and see what's going on?
I think that people must understand that somebody who's under pressure, who's in debt, is trying to do the best they can. In most cases they're living below their reasonable expenses because they're trying to give a little bit to everybody. When the solution is they'll never be able to pay it. So they're trying to pay a bit to this creditor, a bit to that creditor.
And then after time you've built up a bit of
so in the end, it's never too late. Unfortunately, most people tend to leave it too late, that they're now in the court or repossession court, but it's never too late to repair, because once they get the advice and they start restructuring themselves, in most cases, 90% of the cases in a PIA, which is one of the insolvency arrangements, they keep their home. That stat in bankruptcy is 30%. So sometimes the family home...
Is that because the insolvency legislation dictates that that's has precedent now over a court order, or is it because the banks are willing to allow that person to enter in some arrangement? Because, or is it like if there's a debt ratio, or like if someone owns 400,000 on their family home, they haven't paid a mortgage in 2 years, that would be typical, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So you probably have arrears there of 50 or 60,000 euro that have to be dealt with first,
Sure.
and then the bank, the actual value of the asset might have devalued, so you're in a negative equity situation. That's probably not an uncommon situation.
No, but it's kind of...
I know maybe market values increase small at the moment, but
They have, but I suppose they haven't. If you've got somebody who had a mortgage of 400 grand and they got a 100% mortgage back in 2008 and they now owe 350 grand,
yeah,
and the house is worth 150, 200 grand, but they can afford a 200 grand mortgage,
Sure.
that's what they'll pay.
okay,
It gives them certainty but that's all they do. It's math.
Yeah.
A lot of this is maths, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's a mathematical calculation.
Yeah.
Over 25 years, this is what of mortgage
Yeah.
they can afford, based on their income, the family
are banks
circumstances.
then willing to engage in those?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's been a difficult challenge.
Yeah.
Banks have challenged that. There was the creditors' veto. There's now appeal process. That has been challenged, but there's been a lot of cases, as you know from being a solicitor.
Yeah.
Case law dictates a lot of the future cases.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that's happened in the last 6 months that is going to make that a little bit easier.
Okay. And then, because I suppose this leads into, there's a lot of talk at the moment about the traditional banks in Ireland, they're kind of selling off their books now. So there's auctions and there's properties going to auction. There's, they kind of do it in mass. One bank would do it this 6 month period, and then the next bank. But there seems to be a lot of talk at the moment about these vulture funds. So, in my understanding, it's basically I want to say one of the main high street banks. They have a book, so they have their historic mortgage portfolio book. There's X amount owing on it. You're talking millions, probably billions on it. So they would sell to an independent party, whether it's an American company or whatever, a vulture fund. They buy the debt and they pursue the individual. What's your feel or perception on the vulture fund at the moment? Like, is it a normal economic transaction that it's just a bank doing normal business, selling to a third party independent company, and they're taking over the debt as like any other debt would do? Or is it a bit harsh? Or is it are they consumer friendly? Are they insolvency friendly? Or what is your view on the vulture funds?
I think firstly the title is slightly aggressive, that they're vulture funds.
Yeah.
They're an investment fund, and I'm not defending them, but I deal with them every day, and all of them. And basically they're just a necessary, I call it evil, that's required out there to deal with it. So all of them, they're an investment fund. They buy debts from banks,
and
bad
at a
loans,
reduced value.
at a discounted value, and their only goal is to get as much as they can out of it.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. So they're actually quite commercial, some of them.
Yeah.
And really that's all they're trying to do. For most people, in the contract, for every agreement that you signed, it allows the bank to do it.
Yeah.
But they've done what they've done
mortgage
it. This is in the small print. They can do it whenever they want.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you're at an end.
Yeah.
You still have the same.
Your debtor or the person who owed the money just changes.
Absolutely. So if you've got called for one of these investment or vulture funds after chasing you or whatever, you're still entitled to avail of the personal insolvency legislation. You're still entitled to a protective certificate. You're still entitled to due process. You mentioned there about houses being put up in auction.
Yeah.
They aren't family homes.
Okay.
They're buy-to-lets.
Okay.
They're under receivership.
Okay.
Receivers have been appointed and they're entitled to do that.
Okay.
Family homes don't have that. A lot of people come in and say, "Geez, am I going to lose my house? Am I going to get thrown out?" There is a process for protecting people.
Okay.
And to be fair, I think most courts would be very conscious not to put through orders if there's an option.
Yeah.
And you're entitled, even in your repossession court, to avail of advice through a PIP and protection under the insolvency legislation, and that's really important.
Okay. How does the individual homeowner practically become aware that the loan isn't bought over by a vulture fund? Is it just like a letter in the door?
It's a letter in the door.
Just from the
It's literally that cold.
Okay. And
You have just been sold.
would they do it at a certain level? Like, do they buy the debt off the bank, say 2 months in arrears, 12 months in arrears, 2 years in arrears, or is it just the bank will say, we don't think we're going to recover this batch of loans, and this is the loans up for sale? They bring their own actuaries, or it might be investigative accountants, and then say we're going to value it, put a price on it. Okay.
And that's it. It's simply they buy a book of loans, and to be fair,
Are they aware at that time that an individual owner might be in the insolvency process?
No.
Okay.
I actually have cases whereby in between the process the loan had been sold.
Yeah. Okay.
So the individual thought it was PTSB, but it turned out to be one of the vulture
But
funds,
obviously,
or AAB.
because we're not talking about family homes, they're investment properties. The rents for these properties are obviously going to the bank anyway. Is it? So the owners.
In some cases, yeah.
Okay. And would they ever do a deal where they just hand back the asset, or is that happen? Or
Some of them would.
Okay.
Some of them would.
okay, so it's whatever specific to that person.
And it's case by case.
Okay.
But the worst thing you can do is ignore it.
Yeah.
I would say for anybody out there, if you're worried about something, big or small, as I said, it could be 50 grand, it could be 50 million. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Then go on to the register.
Yeah.
Look for a registrar of PIPs under the PIP panel under the Ewaldia scheme, and go meet somebody. It'll allow you to meet a PIP, and the government will pay for that. It'll allow you to meet a solicitor, and the government will pay for that. Go get the advice. Okay. Understand what you're entitled to avail of, and protect yourself. And it's never too late.
One last question was there's a lot of talk about split loans. What exactly is that process? What is split loans? What does that mean?
Yeah, there's probably two parts to that. I think that ties into the recent announcement by PTSB, AIB and Ulster Bank that they're going to sell somewhere between 25 to 30,000 of bad loans, they would call them.
Okay.
People who are not cooperation or in arrears.
Yeah.
Some of those are family homes. There's probably about 100,000 restructured loans that are classed as split loans. Split loans are very simple.
Okay.
You have a mortgage of 500,000.
Yeah.
The mortgage is worth 250. The house is worth 250. You're paying a mortgage of 250, 300,000, and the other 200,000 just sits there. And the only solution is that you will sell your house at the end of the term to clear that mortgage.
Okay.
Which, if you follow that process, and there's 100,000 of them, that's possibly 100,000 people who will lose their home and will have to rely on the state to house them, which makes no sense. That's almost an admittance that you can't pay it.
So you're just waiting to the end of the term of your mortgage to realise that you're homeless.
Yeah. And that's it. Simple as that. Because you won't have enough equity. Because property prices go up or down. I'm not an auctioneer, but it's never going to be there. So that's correct under central bank regulations. The bank can do that. That is restructuring. In an insolvency arrangement, it's highly likely that split loan, most of it will be written off. Okay. Because you must, my job is to get somebody certainty for the rest of their life. I have a relationship with them for 5 or 6 or 7 years, but at the end of it, I must be able to sign up and say, once they leave my office and leave the process, they have certainty for the rest of their lives. Okay. That can't have a 200 grand
which they're entitled to.
Absolutely. Yeah. But it can't have something sitting out there, 2 or 3 or 400 grand sitting out there and the never.
Yeah.
And the only solution is, well, actually just sell your home.
What are the typical costs for someone to enter into insolvency process? Like, what outside is there legal costs? Is there insolvency cost itself? How is all factored in if I have limited income or anyway? So how is that all factored in from the start?
I suppose there's the commercial side of it then too. Obviously the initial advice is free, and then that depends on the particular commercial realities of the PIP they're dealing with.
Okay.
Some people will charge upfront, some will do payment plans. Everybody will do a different arrangement. Yeah. So it's really about going to meet somebody, getting the advice, and then you can decide what you want to do. And that's the way we work with. We would put a payment plan in place ourselves.
Very good.
We work with them. They're effectively people that you're trying to help, and they've probably been referred from somebody. Yeah. Okay. So we look at it.
That's excellent. Well, Mark, thank you very much for your time today. I think that was very, very informative. If anyone wants to contact Mark, we put your details up on the screen. And so, thank you very much, Mark. Best of luck. Cheers. Thank you.